Thanks to all of you for being here. And David, as the reporter who has probably spent the most time of any of us sitting through downtown investment authority meetings, God love you. I'm going to start you with this one. So it's been a tough couple of weeks, couple of months for downtown development. Catch us up on some projects that have been in trouble.
So the two big rendering projects were a couple of big high-rises on the downtown waterfront. One would have been at the former site of the Jacksonville Landing, and the other one would have been at the site of the former Duval County Courthouse. So they really appealing renderings would have brought high-rise, sort of luxury apartment living to downtown. But they are the latest of this growing scrapbook of a city of renderings that just didn't get off the ground beyond the sort of initial planning and some economic incentives that were approved at some level for them. So those are going to, the DIA says they're going to, Downtown Investment Authority says they've got other developers interested in those sites. They feel like they're going to be able to reload on those. Then there's it's gotten less attention, but there were 3 historic buildings, including the 16-story Independent Life building that's near the federal courthouse. Those were going to be done by a developer out of St. Augustine, and they did some work on them. One's the Ambassador Hotel, one's the iLife Tower, one's a smaller building. But if they had been done, that would have been a nice little pocket of development, take some historic abandoned buildings. Those kind of ran into a lot of trouble, and so they are basically going nowhere, and the city's going to terminate those development agreements. So those are real blows. And, of course, you have the Rise Doro apartment fire, which was, beyond the control of the Downtown Investment Authority, but that was about to open. So that was a real blow to downtown in terms of a setback. So, there's always a certain amount of churn, and there are some projects. There's 4 or 5 projects that are still moving forward downtown that are going to add residential housing. But, it's kind of, you can kind of say downtown is up, it's down. It's kind of simultaneously up and down in this standpoint in terms of, where's it going to go next? Is there going to be another wave of development coming, or is this kind of a fizzle out of this era that we've had of pretty strong growth after over a few years?
And I didn't even realize that the Ambassador Hotel was now on ice. I mean, that project is really fully underway. There's construction happening. The streets are blocked off because of the construction. I mean, so that really is like a mid-project halt.
Really, it is. And, they really have not done a lot of construction in a while. But, they did get to the point where they gutted the building. They were putting in new windows. The iLife Tower, which is even more visible, was at one time the tallest downtown building in Jacksonville. It's, they did the same thing. They did a lot of work on it. Hard hats, crews out there, look like things are happening, but then they've run into a lot of issues in terms of contracts and liens and all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah. Keitha, as somebody who's spent days working next to that burning building, you obviously saw firsthand that destruction.
The first thing that came to mind when you mentioned downtown development was the Rise Door. Downtown in general is like the little engine that we're all rooting for it, like go, 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 develop, do better, and then this happens, and it feels like it's back to back. We're seeing things happen. The Rise Door was shocking. I remember walking into that morning when the fire was going on. It was kind of like I drove into downtown. I get in like at 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 in the morning, and I see this huge pummel of smoke. I'm like, well, what is going on there? And then you get closer and closer, and you smell it. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, is the station on fire? Thank goodness it was, was not. But yeah, the Rise Door is kind of like, gosh, that was going to be nice, a rooftop bar, more housing for people. Mind you, it was luxury housing, kind of pricey, but it would have been nice to have it there. And it's kind of like one thing after another with downtown development. We're just hopeful. And when we were talking about downtown development as well, I thought about the Lift Every Voice and Sing Park. We know in the La Villa area that it's 2.5 years behind on construction now when you think about it. It has this big statue out there. It's been sitting there for quite some time, at least about a year or so, and nothing else. I spoke with Lloyd Washington, who has been a big advocate for that project for more than a decade. He's been trying to get this park up and running, and he's just like, the construction costs, the material, they're just behind. They're hoping to have it open by the summer of this year. We'll see, if it actually happens.
And they do have that cool concrete, saying, lift every voice. And
it's gorgeous. I'm just hoping get everything else around it, going. We'll see.
Tricia, so there's recent challenges like on the grand scale that we're talking about, but also small ones. Burrito Gallery closed after 18 years. And it's one restaurant, but in a downtown landscape that doesn't have many, it actually is kind of a significant loss.
No, I think it's really indicative of the businesses that have hung in there just being like exhausted. It's baffling to me that we have been working on an improved downtown for. I lost my mic. For 30 years now. When I first came here, we were looking at one vision, and then 10 years later, we seem to have a different vision, and then there's another vision, and it just seems like for such an area that is so anxious to have a thriving downtown, why can't we make it happen?
It's a good question. I mean, I know Shad Khan said a couple years ago, David, that he saw the previous 10 years as just a lost decade, that downtown had, if anything, declined in that period. But he's also behind what surely would be a galvanizing project, the Four Seasons Hotel. I mean, it's hard to imagine that not being transformative, even if it's exclusive and the kind of thing that few of us could probably afford to go to.
Yeah, it's such a signature project. It adds buzz to downtown for sure. It adds some, in a sense of, yes, something that was said to be done has actually been done. And that's a real accomplishment in terms of moving momentum forward. You know, I think downtown, the way I view it is, to be a cliche, there's a tale of two downtowns. There's a historic part of downtown, which is what we think of downtown, where you can park your car and walk for blocks on old-fashioned streets with sidewalks. That part of downtown has really not taken off. And that's, so if you go to that part of downtown, you don't really see a whole lot of changes. There's been some projects there, some development. But then if you go sort of to what they also consider downtown, which is the Riverside Avenue area, that has taken off in leaps and bounds. That is a true before and after, and they consider that part of downtown.
Brooklyn and Riverside.
Brooklyn and
where the
La Villa
TE used to be.
where the TE used to be, and there's parts of the South Bank that are doing that. So it's kind of, downtown will not be a successful downtown until that historic core of downtown is thriving, and you can go there 7 days a week, all hours of the day and night, and find something to do. That's been the real struggle to date.
And it gets so frustrating, though, because you go to places like Tampa, which a lot of people compare to Jacksonville. You're just like, why can't we just get there? Slowly but surely, I guess, in time.
Yeah, but the resources, they do have to be allocated. There's a limited amount of money that the city has to kind of incentivize development, and it spends a lot of money doing that already. But, in terms of that historic downtown area that David references, I mean, so much focus now is actually happening kind of around the sports complex area where your station is and, where the Doro is, where the Four Seasons will be, where the UF campus expansion will be, where the soccer stadium will be. I mean, so it's almost an entirely different downtown that the focus is a lot of the
Currently
focus is
on.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There just doesn't seem to be a vision that kind of connects it all. I mean, I don't think people who live in Riverside and Brooklyn would consider themselves living in downtown at all. And it doesn't seem like there's a cohesive multi-year plan to say, okay, let's start from here and make it all blend together. I don't know. I'm sure it's frustrating to businesses like the Burrito Gallery that have been there for so long and are just like, well, we just can't make it work anymore.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about the week's biggest headlines, and you can join our conversation by calling 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, and you can watch our program live stream now on Facebook and the WJCT YouTube page. You can also reach out on social media. I want to talk about just a couple of good things that are happening downtown. Keitha alluded to the Lift Every Voice and Sing Park, which is coming, but is not yet there. Friendship Fountain finally reopened.
Yes.
This weekend is the Winterland concert, which is in the park at the center of the city by City Hall, James Weldon Johnson Park. So there are, bright spots.
And you don't think about how significant something like Friendship Fountain is until you actually go there and experience it. I went the day after it opened, the morning after, and to see all the kids out there with their parents laughing, running around, enjoying the place. I'm big on social media, by the way, and all over Instagram, you're seeing all these photos and videos of people with their families back out there saying how wonderful it is to live in Jacksonville. So something as small as that is revamping our areas, our Friendship Fountain. It made a huge difference. It kind of breathed a little bit of life back into the area. make people excited and proud to be from Jax.
Yeah, I saw one woman that I follow on social media with. She put a video and she said, "I get it now, Friendship Fountain. Like I understand." And there is a certain
A feeling that you get going there, definitely.
Is that enough to carry the weight? I mean, maybe it says, David, how important the civic projects are, as much or more so than the apartment buildings or the actual businesses themselves, but kind of a sense of place.
Yeah, I think the key to downtown, in my view, is just the Riverwalk, making it where you can live, say, in Brooklyn and get on the Riverwalk and walk downtown. They're going to be extending the Riverwalk all the way to the sports complex. There are people who walk the Riverwalk every day. They've been waiting years for that to happen. And then you'll have some connectivity there. You can go across the bridges. The idea that you can go downtown to see Friendship Fountain and then walk across the Main Street Bridge and experience the Riverwalk. That really, I think, is the key to connecting everything together and making it where, people always say in Manhattan, people walk for half a mile and don't even pay attention to how
It's
long
true.
they've walked because they enjoy the walk.
Yeah.
And if you can walk along an enjoyable river walk and there's something up ahead that makes you want to keep going,
Well,
that's going to connect everything
I mean, a
together.
little shade wouldn't hurt.
Shade would hurt, yes.
well, I'm from New York City, and I can tell you, sometimes you don't realize because you're just rushing to get to where you're going. It's cold, and too many people around. But yeah, I definitely agree.
I do want to just talk briefly about a switcheroo at the landing site. So that's been a little bit controversial. The chamber came out this week and said, well, we fully support a riverfront restaurant at the landing site. But that is a departure from the original award-winning design of that parcel, which initially had a playground on the waterfront and the restaurant towards the back. So how significant is that swap for people who were sold on the idea of this as a civic destination, Tricia?
Well, I think that having a restaurant on the river it would be pretty key to its commercial success, and this seems to me purely a commercial decision. When you're looking at what's going to draw more people and more money to the landing, it's going to be restaurant and the ability to sit and have a drink right on the water. It's unclear to me why you can't have both. But yeah, I mean, that to me is purely a commercial decision, not one that's designed to best serve the people of Jacksonville.
I think there still will be a playground, but originally the idea was you go to bring your family and kids and you're playing on the playground and you've got the fantastic view of the waterfront. That makes it a playground unlike any other. Now, I think you'd still get a view of the waterfront from this playground, which we moved towards the back of the park. But the idea behind the dining is that, love or hate the landing, there were half a dozen restaurants where you could go and get a meal, lunch or dinner, and sit outside and enjoy the river. And you can't do that anymore on that site. And so there's been a real push by DIA, Downtown Investment Authority, to try and bring some riverfront dining back to people as they're walking up and down the riverfront. It's maybe a risky proposition. Some speakers made the point that restaurants are a really volatile business. And, would it be the worst thing of all is to have an empty building with no restaurant in it, and it's just sitting there on this valuable riverfront property.
Kind of why we took down the landing.
Yeah, we've had that before.
between businesses. Yeah, exactly. So it's part of a strategy to really get a lot more waterfront dining up and down the river, which a lot of polls show that's what people really would like to see.
Yeah, Trish said some key words there. What best serves the people of Jacksonville. That's really what it's all about. Maybe it's because I'm a mom of small kids, but you have to think family, I believe, when it comes to development in this area, because that's a big draw for a lot of us while we're still here in Jacksonville. It's a nice place to raise families. So you have to think about that. What's going to serve the people of Jacksonville best?
And if you're thinking about making sure that you have facilities for people who live downtown, you can't be all restaurants. You're right. I mean, who's going to live downtown if there's no place to go take your kids? Who's going to raise a family downtown if there's no parks nearby? So I think it goes back to a grand plan, a grand scheme that can serve both commercial needs and the ability for the city of Jacksonville, the residents of Jacksonville, to make downtown a destination.